Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Galit Speaks podcast. I am here today with Christina Morelli. She's a coach working with individuals and people in partnership to create healthy, rewarding, fulfilling relationships. Her practice is all about fostering self-awareness and providing the relationship education and skills that we were never taught. The mission is to educate the world on how to increase relational and emotional intelligence, overall happiness, and personal healing. I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I think that is something we all need a little bit about.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
how did you get into this?
Oh man, it's so interesting. Everybody asks me that question, and I feel like certain things are just innate within us from the aspect of like what our true missions are. And from a very young age, my relationships always really mattered. I had a rough upbringing with my mother who struggled with mental health. And even even as early as I can remember, I remember really thinking like, this relationship doesn't need to be this way. Like there's got to be a better way. And like, even in my early teens, I was like reading psychology books on how to have relationships and any type of interpersonal relationship, right? So family, romantic, friendships, anything around like the social psychology of how we interact with each other has always been my jam. And one time somebody asked me like, Christina, if you could talk about anything forever, right, without ever getting tired or losing energy about it, what would it be? I was like, relationships, communication, like what does it mean to get along? I love how complex human beings are and like understanding the nuances and beauty in those complexities in all of us. And so, yeah, it was just something that came really natural to me. And when you find that one thing that you cannot get enough of, can't read enough about it, can't learn enough about it, can't talk enough about it, like that is when you know it is your mission and your purpose.
I love that. So you deal with all types of relationships, not just romantic relationships.
Yeah. So most of my clients come to me for romantic relationship advice. But what I will say is all of the skills that I teach can be applied to interpersonal relationships because it mainly is based on self-awareness. Self-awareness is the fundamental foundation of everything we do when it comes to interacting with ourselves and with each other.
Okay.
When people talk about what are the keys to a successful relationship, they say communication and compromise. But you can't do either one of those if you don't have clarity around what you're trying to communicate. Am I communicating it accurately? What am I willing to compromise on that won't cause resentment or for me to lose who I am? So a lot of the work that I do is really fostering that self-awareness. So when you are actually engaging in relationships, whether it's setting boundaries, resolving conflict, or not resolving conflict, like maybe sometimes you just want to dive into the conflict. It's all about like, how can I do this in a generative way that supports me as an individual? It also supports the person I'm interacting with.
Wow. So how do you help people get that clarity? Because that I feel like is something so difficult to accomplish, right? A lot of times, especially in romantic relationships, you know that there's something wrong, or you know that you need something, or that something is missing, but you don't know how to identify what that is.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. Something that I always say is we were never taught how to have relationships. When we think about all the skills we were taught growing up in school, it was always around like, how do you have a career? How do you handle your life? How do you budget your money? But nobody ever talks to us about how do we recognize when a conflict is happening, and then how do we resolve it and repair that rupture that happens within that relationship? Like, how do you fight clean? How do you ask for what you want? Because a lot of what we know about relationships is based off of what was modeled for us within our homes and what we constantly are witnessing in the media, whether that's social media, on television. And it's those two things that paint the picture for us and also subconsciously tell us how to act in relationships or what relationships should be. So because we were never formally taught how to have relationships, that is a part of my mission. There are plenty of learnable, developable skills that we can learn very easily. Honestly, it's not hard. It's just nobody ever gave us the framework. So I provide the framework so that way when you are coming up to certain milestones in your relationship, or if you come across a bump in the road in your relationship, or maybe you are trying to prepare yourself for a relationship, all of those things can actually be taught. And when we start posing these questions and providing what I like to call the house, right? So I provide you the framework and then you get to decorate the house however you want, right?
Okay.
As long as you color within the lines, then you can have a really successful relationship.
That's awesome. Yeah, and you're completely right. Like the majority of us have come from some pretty toxic households and have only had that type of relationship as a model. And I know that that was definitely the case for me. I came from an abusive household, and the majority of my relationships early on, both romantic and otherwise, were kind of toxic.
Yeah.
Right? They were abusive. They were not what I wanted, but I did not have the skills to ask for what I want. I did not have the skills to identify what was wrong. And obviously, like, I was going for something that I was comfortable with. And it took many, 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 many years of therapy to be able to get out of that.
Right. But as soon as you had the information, you were able to start spotting it and choosing otherwise. I think that's where people struggle. Like you said, sometimes we don't know any different. And because this is all we know, this actually feels like home, but really it's just what's familiar. And that doesn't always mean that it's good. Familiar isn't good. So when people say like, oh, he feels like home or she feels like home, that's not always a good thing. It means that it's familiar for you. And it's not necessarily the best relationship for you. In regards to what you were saying of like, how do we even know? It's ultimately like, how are we feeling? If you aren't aware of what gaslighting is, or aren't aware that when you make a request for a need and that person shuts it down and you're like, oh, that hurt. Like maybe you're not aware that they are taking it as a personal attack because you don't understand the psychology behind it. But if it feels bad, there's a good chance that there is something that needs to be addressed, whether it's within yourself or with your partner or family member, so on and so forth. You know, maybe there's a boundary that's being crossed, but you don't realize that there's a boundary that's being violated in that moment. And when you start to consistently feel these pings of hurt, it could be small or it could be big. That's when you know you need to start seeking information, because you're like, what is this? Where is this coming from? And then you can start like seeking out, like, what does this even mean to me? I know I don't like this, but I don't know how to put words to it. So oftentimes we don't even have the verbiage to describe what we are experiencing. So it makes it a lot more difficult to take action in a progressive way for our own benefits and for the benefits of our relationship. So I just want to give you kudos for taking the steps of going into therapy and seeing coaches to have those healthier relationships, because that's what it takes. When you don't know the answers, you have to seek and find them. And you can find, there's so many free resources. There's plenty of books, plenty of blogs. You have podcasts like this one. There's no excuse for you to live in unnecessary pain when you have so many resources available to you.
Yeah, I am a huge proponent of like therapy, talk therapy, any type of therapy, and coaching for that reason, because we don't have all the answers and the people around us don't have all the answers, but there are people that have been through this. There are people that are trained to help.
Yeah.
So why are we struggling? Like, why do I know I struggled for so long. Like, it's so hard to reach out for help, but once you do, you're like, oh,
yeah,
there's someone that can like guide me along this road, and I don't have to struggle. I don't have to live in this feeling.
Yeah. Change is really hard for the ego, and the ego latches on to that like with a death grip. So anytime you're doing anything expansive outside of like what your ego is telling you to like play within these small bounds, you're going to feel pressure. That's going to be like a complete breakthrough whenever you do like push enough to break through that wall of what was keeping you in the place that you were, in order to evolve and expand. Yeah, it's just human nature, unfortunately. But what I will say is that like feeling of pressure or discomfort or anxiety is a really good sign. It's a very unpleasant feeling most of the time. But if you can say like, I know this feeling in my body, I'm feeling a lot of pressure, I'm feeling anxiety, I feel like I'm on the brink of something, but it's so uncomfortable. But if you just like stick it out and then you have that breakthrough, it's like complete liberation on so many levels. That's one thing I really like to say about relationships, is that like relationships should be liberating, expanding, and empowering. So if you can feel those three words within yourself, and when I say relationship, I even mean the relationship with yourself. Like, do you feel empowered in yourself, in your voice? Does your voice feel liberated? Are you constantly evolving? When you can start feeling that within yourself, and then bring that into any relationship, you are helping that other person also experience those things, because you're going to equally encourage them to do the same.
Yeah. And then Jen, who's watching, said, I also want to selfishly validate other humans, therapists like me. It's hard for therapists to reach out for help too. Yeah, it definitely is. I know that it must be hard for like, I don't know if it is like this for other professions, because I know that in my profession, that it's super hard. Like one of like my other job, right, is I own a business, a virtual CFO company, and my books get done last.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that is the same with therapy, for therapists. And Jen has also asked, can you repeat those three words again, please?
Yes. Relationships should be empowering, expansive, and liberating.
Yes. I love that. Yeah. Please write that down. Anyone who's watching this right now. Oh, let me post it in the comments.
Yeah.
Yeah. Expansive,
empowering, and liberating. So no more ball and chain, guys. It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. I love that. And Jen said she's literally writing it down.
Yes. Share with the friends. Thank you. I also want to say for therapists that, sometimes struggle to find help, it's a part of it is that they don't find the time, but also the other part of it is it's like, well, I'm supposed to be, helping other people, and maybe I shouldn't need the same help, I guess, is maybe the thought. Jen, I'd be so curious to see what your actual thought process is around why you feel like it's hard for therapists to reach out for help themselves, because usually we're the ones who need it the most, because we hold so much from clients. And unless you're doing like clearing practices between each client that you have, like you're taking on that energy and there's nowhere else to put it. So definitely prioritize your well-being, because in the end, you'll be able to prioritize your clients' well-being.
Yeah, I honestly, so it's crazy because I also, I considered going down the road of psychology, and I got a bachelor's in it, and then I ultimately decided that I could not sit and hold that, like I had so much going on with me, and I did not think that I would have the capacity to sit and hold that space for others.
Yeah.
So you're so right.
Yeah.
Totally hard. Jen said, I have a hard time anecdotally finding a therapist because I get rejected pretty quick when therapists find out I am a therapist.
Huh.
Interesting. Have you found that too?
No.
Ooh.
No, I'm so curious. But also, I'm a coach. I'm not a licensed therapist. Although I have a background and education in psychology, I chose to do coaching instead of therapy for many reasons. But so no, I haven't experienced that before. But I thought, like, in my brain, I thought all therapists had like fellow therapists that they could, I don't know. Anyways, I hope you find the therapist you need, Jen.
Yeah, I wonder if it's just like a stigma
Maybe.
for therapists. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I actually want to talk about something that we touched on in our communication before, which I thought was like really interesting and very different. You spoke to a little bit about menstrual cycles and how that has to do with, you know, business-wise, what you're doing and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about more?
Yeah. This is a really heavy topic. It's a heavy flow topic. I've just put it.
Before we start there, I just want to say, Jen said, Galit knows I have an absolutely great therapist now. Thank you, Christina.
Awesome.
So, cool. Okay, yes, now let's get into ant flow.
Okay, great. Yeah, this is a very deep topic for so many reasons. I first want to just acknowledge a lot of the pain and suffering and shame and tabooness that goes into our understanding of what the menstrual cycle is. We were brought up thinking the menstrual cycle is just bleeding, and then outside of our bleed, we're just like having a steady, normal day to day, and then we bleed, and then we're back to normal. And that's not the case at all. And I can't even believe that it took me till I was 34 to even know that there was 4 stages of a menstrual cycle. So it's not just I'm not bleeding and I'm bleeding, but that's what we were taught. And then there was no additional education beyond that unless you sought it out yourself. And that just really breaks my heart for a lot of reasons. There is something incredibly powerful about being able to tap in and tune into the female cycle, both from a male and female perspective. So when I refer to from a male perspective, if you are a male and you have a female partner, learn about your female's menstrual cycle, for the love of God. Most men say it's not my problem, I'm not dealing with it, but it is your responsibility in a way. Like when you think about more than, I want to say 51% of the population is women, and you don't want to know anything about their health or well-being or what they go through or how that impacts their daily lives. And especially from a partner perspective, if you are really committed to having a deeply intimate, magical, beautiful connection with your female partner, you got to understand the female cycle. Like you can't just ignore it and pretend it doesn't exist. And a lot of us have been told our whole lives to ignore it and pretend it doesn't exist. And we often have to. There's many of us who struggle every single month with pain, endometriosis, cysts, really heavy bleeding that is really inconvenient to our lives, but we're supposed to still show up to work day in and day out like nothing is changing. And I also feel a lot of resistance even saying that, because for the longest time, men were like, well, this is why women shouldn't work, or this is why women shouldn't be empowered. And it's like, no, that's not the point. You're missing the point. That's a very shallow view of what we're actually trying to communicate. Yeah. And when you can actually understand like the significance of, I like to refer to my menstrual cycle as a ceremony. Like every month I'm having a ceremony in like the enlightenment that comes, the divineness that comes, the lightness that comes through me. And it's all these different stages. But getting away from more of the energetic aspect of it and going into like the 4 stages of the cycle and how it impacts our lives and how you can actually use it in a practical way, whether it's with business, within your personal life, within your romantic life. I like to refer to the 4 stages as seasons that we have in a year, right? You have winter, spring, summer, and fall. And that helps put things in perspective when you think about how we interact during these different seasons throughout the year. What happens to our bodies, what happens to nature during these different seasons of the year. So first is what I would consider to be winter, which starts at day 1 of your bleed. And when you think about winter, what comes to mind for you, Galit?
Hibernation.
Hibernation, yes. Hibernation, going internal. You want quietness. It's shorter days, so there's less activity that's happening. You're more likely to want to sleep and take care of yourself, and like some nesting happening, right? You're just, when you think about wintertime, what is happening during wintertime? So yes, correct. And then as we move out of our bleed and start preparing for ovulation, we're moving into springtime. So what do you think about when spring comes around?
Yeah, so plant like flowers, plants blooming. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So energy is coming back. You're coming, like nature's coming back to life. You're coming back to life from, your hibernation during your bleed, and your energy is coming back. And this is all hormonal based as well. I just want to make it really clear. This isn't some woo-woo energy shit that I'm talking about. It's actually like our biology is in sync with the seasons cyclically. So as we go into spring, when I think about spring, I think about everybody coming out from winter. It's cold. It's the best. It's the first warm, sunny day after winter, and everybody's at the park, and everybody's like skipping and happy and joyful and social and active, and like all of these different characteristics and attributes of how we tend to act whenever the sun comes out and the winter goes away. So that is your body like really starting to prepare for ovulation. And another part of that is like you start feeling yourself. You're just like, damn, I look good. And and it's actually proven that you are, quote unquote, more attractive as you're preparing for ovulation for a lot of reasons. And that is actually hormonal, right? So as our hormones change, our skin is better, our hair is more lustrous, we are more horny because our body is trying to make a baby. And we release different pheromones, which ideally attracts a partner. So this is all biological. And then as we go into spring and into summer, I like to call this hot girl summer. Whenever you are like, you're at your peak of energy, you're at your peak of performance, you're at your peak of social, you're at your peak of like, I'm going to find somebody and I want to have sex, things, right? So things like that. And then after summertime, it starts to quiet down again. And we're moving into fall, which is like the PMS. If people experience PMS, which is like the preparing for winter again. So things are getting quiet. We are, we're calming down. Our energy is slowing down. We're feeling more relaxed. We want our pumpkin spice lattes. We want our cozy blankets and our beanies, right? Sweater season. I don't know, whatever it is. Right. So as you're thinking about these different cycles, you can actually play to these different energies based off of where you are in your cycle. I do not base my month off of October 1st to October 31st. I base my month off of the day I start bleeding to the next day I start, the next month, for the first day I start bleeding. And as I am planning out this month, this is when I can strategically be like, okay, I'm going to schedule podcasts the first 2 weeks of my cycle when I am at my peak energy, when I am at my utmost clarity and focus, when I am my most social, outgoing self. And you can do this in business, right? So if you're looking for a job and you're like, I need to schedule interviews, if you have the availability, obviously, but you can like schedule an interview to be close to your ovulation, because that's when you are your most badass self, in the sense of like, I'm putting my best foot forward. I'm feeling really clear and confident in myself. Like that is when you're at your peak confidence. And then in the later half of my cycle, that's when I do a lot of like tying up loose ends and planning and preparing for the next month, doing my research and reading, like a lot more internal, and, you know, like planning out my next month of social media and connections and things like that. And then it's the first 2 to 3 weeks that I'm making that push. And then the last week is when I start, you know, preparing for another month of strategy. So when it comes to like businesses, running your businesses, or even your social life, when you are thinking about planning social activities, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I definitely know I experienced this at the beginning of my cycle. I want to do all of the things with my friends, and I end up planning it out for an entire month. And then the end of my cycle comes and I'm like, fuck, I'm tired. I'm sorry, am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, I was like, fuck, I'm tired. I don't have the energy to do this. And then I overcommit because I had all that energy at the beginning when I was making these commitments. And then the time comes and I'm like, I changed my mind, right? So when you're able to actually work with your cycle, you can plan like when you can be the most social and actually honor your body and honor your internal feminine wisdom that is happening in that time, instead of exhausting yourself. We exhaust ourselves and then we start resenting our periods, and we start resenting being a woman for so many reasons, because we can't live, quote unquote, like the same thing every single day. But really, there's just something so magical and beautiful about this. And, you know, when I think about relationships and how this impacts relationships, you know, when, let's say you are in a long-term relationship and you're like, I don't know, my wife only wants to have sex with me 2 weeks out of the month. I wonder why. Like, it could be hormonal. You don't know. But if you don't know until you have the conversation, right? Or it's like, why is she always so fucking crazy and anal during this time? It's just PMS. And it's like, no, you don't get to dismiss it because we're at this stage in our cycle. If anything, it probably should be even paid to attention more clearly during that stage, because that is when we have like the most clarity from like our internal wisdom. Intuition is like right before our bleed. I like to think of it as like, as our uterus lining is thinning, so is our patience, so is our so we don't put up with the bullshit, right?
Yeah. Like that's when the truth is coming out.
The truth is coming out. And unfortunately, we're not gonna like sugarcoat it for you right now. Give me a week and I'll sugarcoat it for you then if you can't handle it. But until then, like, just do what we need you to do.
Yeah.
And this also helps male partners or even female partners. If you have a female partner, like, it helps you understand like what to expect, how to plan, how to participate in your female's life a lot more in sync in a way. Yeah.
Yeah. I have to say that I also didn't know a ton about my menstrual cycle. I honestly just knew the dates, right? And I planned things according to like oh, I'm not gonna be comfortable like swimming. Like,
Mhm.
so I shouldn't go on vacation during like this point, or like I'm gonna feel bloated and gross. And it was never a fun thing. And it
Yeah.
was never something that like I was looking forward to or like planning around in any sense of a productive way.
Mhm.
Um, and I think what really helped me, and it came out this year, I believe. So I have an aura ring.
Mm.
Um, that aura ring has been around forever, but
Yeah.
they just added this additional function to it where it tracks your cycles
Mhm.
and it gives you insights based on where you are in your cycle. So, like,
Tell me
the cool
more.
thing about this, yeah, so it gives me things like, it monitors my sleep, right?
Mhm.
It tells me things based on my sleep. It monitors, my activity levels and tells me things based on my activity levels. But now it also monitors like where they think I am based on like I log the start of my period and
Yeah.
it tells me where I am in my cycle and
Yep.
like what my energy levels are more likely to be,
Yes. Thank
likely
you, Aura Ring.
yeah, like, oh, if I need to do additional self-care today, like things like
Mhm.
that. And it'll give me an insight when I wake up in the morning.
Mhm.
And like it also monitors your temperature. So it's
Yeah.
going based off of temperature because at the
Basal
end of your
temperature.
cycle,
Yep.
right, you're
I think it's
uh
called like the basal temperature. I don't remember what
yeah,
it's called, but it tells when you're ovulating. Yeah.
exactly. So it'll kind of give you an idea of when you're ovulating. It's not 100% perfect.
Right.
Um, But what happens is after you ovulate, your progesterone starts to go up.
Mhm.
And the progesterone has different effects on your body. And so you need different things. And so that one of the signs of your progesterone going up is your temperature going up. So like
Mhm.
that's another thing that they kind of base all the things around. But it's a really cool idea to be able to like look at my phone in the morning and get, not only know, hey, did I sleep well? Was my activity good for yesterday? But also like,
Mhm.
hey, where am I in my cycle and what does that mean for me?
Yeah, absolutely. I track my cycle for my workouts. Like the first 2 to 3 weeks, like I can do high intensity interval training. I
Yeah,
can do longer runs. I have more endurance and stamina. But then like as I move closer to my fall winter, it's yoga and like long walks, because you have to take care of your body. For the longest time, I was like, why can't I do 100 burpees like last week? And then I would get so frustrated with my body. And the more frustrated you get with your body, the more your body starts to rebel and the worse the periods are. And I really believe that like how you treat your body's going to respond back
yeah,
to you in the same energy. And it just allowed me to be like, I care about my body and where it is right now. And I want to do the best I can. We get one body and I need to do what I can to take care of it for the rest of my life. Like that is my responsibility and duty to this body that I was given at birth.
yeah. And then Jen has a question. Do you have a good period tracking app? I've tried a bunch, but wondering if y'all have a good one.
I don't track my period. Well, in the sense of I don't use an app to track my period. I I'm very consistent with like I bleed between days 26 and 28. And I ovulate on days 14 or 15. And for personal reasons of like not trying to get pregnant right now, like I'm not on birth control and I don't have an IUD or anything. But instead, what I do is I track my ovulation. So I know as of I call it the red days, days 10 to 15 are my red days of like we need to wear protection or we got to do other things to have fun.
Yeah,
And then during those 5 days, I take ovulation tests. And then I know which day I actually ovulate so that I know when I'm in the clear because you can only get pregnant. A lot of people don't know this either, which is,
yeah.
interesting
Like,
that you can only get pregnant one day out of the month. But the more interesting fact, I think, which is also speaking to the beauty and magic of the female genitalia, is that sperm only lives 15 minutes outside of a male body, but it lives up to 5 days in the uterus.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy. That's crazy. And it's awesome. Right? So that's why I give a 5-day period, because you cannot do your thing inside of me up to 5 days before I ovulate, is all I'm saying. Unless we're but that's how I track my cycle. Is I take ovulation tests in the middle of the month, and then I know when I start my bleed, but I don't track it any other way. And then I'm so in tune with how my body feels that I'm like, oh, it's time. It's time. I could house 10 pizzas right now. I'm PMSing.
Yeah. I have used different cycle tracking apps in the past. I haven't loved any of them. I think that for me, the Aura Ring has been the best because I use it anyway, and I'm using it anyway all the time. I originally got it. I've had it for, I'd say 3 or 4 years now. I originally got it because I have a heart condition. And so my particular heart condition means that I can't regulate my my heart rate. And so it will go up to 200 and down to 40 without like any warning. And when it would do that, I would freak out and think I was having a heart attack. And so I was carrying around a pulse oximeter all of the time. And like it was, and like a blood pressure machine. And it was just like, it was too stressful for me.
Yeah.
But with the Aura Ring, I was able to open an app, look at my heart rate, what it was at that exact minute, watch it until it came back down to normal, knew that I was okay, and then close the app.
Girl, you need to get an affiliate link to this Aura ASAP.
I do have an affiliate link. I always tell people about it. I never use my link.
That's funny. Oh, I will say I used Natural Cycles for a while, thinking that would help with tracking like my ovulation. And then I was like, just take ovulation tests. They're so much easier than trying to remember within the first 30 seconds of waking up to take my temperature and then register it. It's like, I don't have that capacity right when I wake up.
Yeah, you can buy ovulation strips in like huge bulk packaging.
Amazon. I got like 300. I'll send you some if you guys want any. Let me know. I have extras.
Yeah. And so yeah, and it's a really I feel like you can use any app. I know that a lot of people are scared about using tracking apps right now because of abortion rights in this country. And they are scared that data will be used against them. So you can track it on a regular calendar, right? Like you can make I've seen women make like little circles on a calendar when they're like little red dots when they're having their period, a little heart when they have sex. Like you can, there are so many cute things that you can do with like a paper calendar.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I'm a sucker for stickers. I love me some sticker calendars. Like, I don't care how old I get, I will keep buying stickers and using them on construction paper. Like,
yeah, so like make it fun. And you know, the more that you are in tune with your body, the more that you know about your body, the better. And I feel like the menstrual cycle, even among gynecologists, it is not talked about enough. Like me being a woman and going to a gynecologist since like I started, I had very bad cramps. I always had very heavy periods, very bad cramping. And I just was like put on birth control when I was super young, just for like, to get rid of to make the cramps just, you know, better so that I could be in school,
right,
handle life, during those periods. And what I found as an adult now, that there were so many things that we could have done
yep,
naturally to help
so many
me.
options, yeah.
There is literally an herb called cramp bark
Oh,
that you can make a tea out of and drink it, and it
yeah.
helps with cramping so much. And the other thing that I found as an adult, and this is I went through some like fertility treatments and stuff like that, and I started doing fertility acupuncture. And since I started doing acupuncture, my cramps are almost non-existent.
Yeah.
And this is coming from someone who has, like, I do not have endometriosis, I have adenomyosis. And that, like, I just thought that would be like my life forever, right?
Yeah.
Like really painful, really heavy, 8-day
Yep.
periods that like were just awful. And it doesn't have to be like that. And the truth is that we're always so scared to talk about it, and we're shamed about it, and it's like taboo and off limits and gross, and because of that we end up suffering.
We don't get the help that we need. We end up suffering. We don't even get the opportunity for research to be done. Like, people still don't know how to treat endometriosis. And it's so unfortunate. But or even how to deal with menopause is even worse. That's even more taboo and less discussed, unfortunately. There's less information about that than there is even our menstrual cycles. And, what I find to be so ridiculous is like, this has been around since the beginning of times. Like, this and sex, which are like the two most taboo things for some reason in our culture, people just are uncomfortable talking about. Like, that is literally like the creation of all of it. We're here because we have menstrual cycles.
And it was very likely that the very first calendars were created by women tracking their menstrual cycles.
I like that fact.
Yeah, it's crazy. So like, because why else would you need to know the span of time between 2 days, right? Like, but if you are a woman and you are trying to track when you're going to bleed, because obviously without pads and without other things, like, you had to, figure out how to deal with that in a sanitary way. But yeah, some of the first calendars and like the first tracking of days were actually from women tracking their cycles, because why else would somebody need to track 28 days?
Right.
28 to 31 days.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that.
And then Jen asked, I'm sorry, what was that called? Does it help the endo? Because I need that. Cramp bark.
Cramp bark. I wonder if it's made out of willow bark. Willow bark is a common thing in like cramp teas that my herbalist friend makes. I wonder.
I don't know.
I'm going to check it out. Cramp bark.
Yeah, I know. I went to a retreat where we got to make our own teas. There was all of these different herbs, and I was like, oh, I have really painful periods. Like, what can I do? What can I use? What can I make myself? And that's what was recommended to me, and it works.
Nice. That's awesome. I'll have to keep that in mind, because I have some friends who could probably benefit from it.
Yeah, and you could do it, like, you can make a tea out of it. You could make now I've lost the word. Like,
a tincture?
So you can make a tincture, but I'm talking about when you sit over a steaming pot.
Oh, a yoni bath. A yoni.
Yeah. Like, why am
yoni steam? I'm sorry. A yoni steam. Yes.
That's what it is.
I haven't done that yet. I need to.
So I keep saying that I'm going to try it, but I don't have one of those special seats. And I feel like if I want to really have a good experience with it, like, that feels like the fun way to do it.
Yeah.
Because like,
actually deserve a royal seat.
Yes, actually squatting over just a regular pot feels like a chore.
Yeah, that's totally fair. That's totally fair.
And it feels like a little less spiritual if I'm like
Mm.
sticking the pot in my toilet.
Yeah, that you just made soup out of. Got beef stew. Now I'm doing a yoni steam.
Yeah. I want like the like full,
Yeah,
the full experience.
you
Get
got to
my
roll the red carpet out for your yoni. She
yes.
deserves it. She puts up with a lot. She deserves it. The
So
other thing I wanted to bring up when you were talking about like unnecessarily suffering is something that I struggled with for most of my life is PMDD, which is essentially like an extreme version of PMS. And it lasted so long. It was like 10, 12 days. So I really only had like a solid good 10 days out of the month where I felt good mentally, physically, and emotionally. And then the rest of it, I was either bleeding or I was just like pure struggling. And like the level of depression that happened during that time when I was, experiencing it was just so devastating. And it wasn't until and I didn't know about it. I just thought I was like, this is the way life is. This is what I'm gonna have to like suffer the rest of my life. And then I started doing research and I was like, oh, this is a thing. Like extreme PMS is a thing and it's called PMDD and this is why. And I was able to seek the help that I needed, which has significantly changed my life in so many ways. Like the amount of days that I struggle mentally around my period is like minimal. And now that I know what to expect, it, from the and now that I actually like respect my period and like what my body goes through and understanding all the mechanics of it has changed a lot. But I just want to do a shout out for anybody who is really struggling mentally and emotionally when it comes to your cycle. Like there is help out there. There are supplements, there are medications if you actually do want to get on medication for it because it's too bad. But yeah, it can make or break people. And it broke me many times at the
Yeah.
time.
So who did you go to? Did you go to a gynecologist? Like, because I know that in the past, when I have come to my gynecologist with a concern, it has just kind of been brushed off and been like, this is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
What was the
I went to
defining?
a psychologist. I went
Okay.
to a psychologist for it. Yeah. I was on antidepressants for a while for anxiety and depression. And then they started actually on the questionnaires asking, like, tell us about your periods, which finally, like they're taking it into account whenever they're diagnosing you or making recommendations. So I actually had a psychologist change my antidepressant to help with PMDD. And that changed a lot. I'm luckily no longer on them. That doesn't mean like I'm a huge advocate for taking medications. I think that's another topic of like that's taboo and stigmatized that I'm like, fucking get over it. Like just feel good and move on with your life. So yeah, I'm not on it anymore. And that's because I started actually working with a holistic doctor to help with a lot of those mental aspects. And it changed everything for me. So if you are suffering, whether it is physically, mentally, or emotionally, like there is help out there. So I appreciate you asking. Psychiatrists can actually help with PMDD.
Okay, good. So yeah, because I'm so surprised that it's not as big of a topic as it should be, because honestly, the fluctuation of hormones that happens between the different stages of your cycle are enormous.
Yeah.
You are literally like a completely different composition
Yeah.
from one like end of the month to another.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. It's a huge thing that we need to advocate for. And if doctors aren't advocating for us, we need to advocate for ourselves. and, there are people out there who specialize in this stuff and who do prioritize it and who are really like pro female health in that way and take it into consideration versus disregard it. But there's like I said, this is a heavy topic. There's so much that goes into talking about periods that is just like mind blowing and unacceptable and heartbreaking. And, I did a podcast on this a couple of weeks ago on a different show, and there were women on there commenting like, I hate my period. It's so gross. Like it's so uncomfortable. I bleed so heavy for 10 days. And it's just like, I can feel the pain that a lot of women are experiencing around it. And that doesn't just mean like physical pain. Like there's a lot of mental pain. Like you were talking about not wanting to wear a bathing suit on a certain day, or, feeling bloated because now I don't want to wear this tight dress. And it's like, there's so much pressure and adjusting to make it acceptable or to hide it or to keep others. But when I feel like the more we talk about it and the more we normalize it and the more we encourage other people to talk about it. So ladies, if you are on this call and you don't talk about it with your male partner, please start talking about it, because that's also going to allow them to be able to cater to what you are needing in those different times of the month. That allows you to ask for exactly what you need in those during those different times of the month. That allows you to communicate what's going on for you. So if you're like, I don't want to have sex this week, I just want to cuddle and get takeout, like that's okay. This is where I'm at. I'm going to honor and respect my body. And I expect you to as well, and it just all really depends on what's going on. But the more you talk about it, and this goes back to what I was saying about like relationships should be liberating. Like the more open and transparent you can be about what's going on with your body, the more you can help yourself, the more your partner can support and help you. So please start talking about it and making it a part of your daily life.
Yeah. And I really love that you call it a ceremony, because calling it a period, calling it Aunt Flo, calling it the red tie, whatever you're calling it, generally it doesn't have a good connotation, right? So if you can give it a different connotation, a positive one, a spiritual one, a one that connects you, right? It's your moon cycle. It is, that there's so many different ways that you can call it that will make it feel better for you. And that in turn will help you feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to refer to it as a ceremony, because if anybody has ever done any type of like really deep spiritual ceremony or plant medicine ceremony, like in preparation for that ceremony, like there's a lot of shit that comes up for people, like going into ceremony. You're like, it's highly charged and you have a lot of thoughts that are going on in your head and you're like, where's all this coming from? And then it's like you go into ceremony and you release it. And I really do believe that like our moon, our bleed is a releasing in that way of like whatever is coming up for you leading up to your bleed, like that is what needs to be released and through your bleed. Yeah.
Yeah. And okay, so we are coming up on about an hour. I want you to tell people how they can reach out to you and how they can work with you.
Thank you. Yes. So you guys can find me on my website at ChristinaMorelliCoaching.com. I'm also on Facebook if you search Christina Morelli Coaching. And then if you ever need anything, my email again is Christina Morelli Coaching. So if you just find those 3 words, you will find me somewhere. And I'll also give my information to you. I don't know if you post show notes or anything like that. So look in the comments below then.
Yeah. And how do you normally work with people? Is it one-on-one? Do you have like group?
Yeah, I do one-on-one coaching with people. Okay. Couples and singles. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, I love that. You also coach couples.
Yes. That's actually my specialty is couples.
Okay. And then Jen said, thanks so much. Thank you for tuning in for the whole show, Jen. I love that.
Thanks, Jen.
All right. And if you're watching this now or watching this on the replay, please make sure to check out Christina and her work. Get a session.
Yeah. Thanks,
And
Galit.
yeah, and tune in for Galit Speaks as well. If you're just seeing this now, please make sure to like, subscribe, share this with every single female that needs this. Every single female needs this,
And
right?
male. Men need to know this too.
Share it with the females, make the males watch it. They're going to be so scared of period talk, but sit with them.
Yeah.
With your male friends and watch this because they need to hear it more than anything.
Yeah.
And make sure to binge watch other episodes of Galit Speaks. And I will see you next time for another topic and another episode. Have an amazing night, everyone.
Have a good night. Thank you.